Please, take care of them both for me." Hearing this from him, I couldn't help but feel utterly dismayed. I couldn't believe he was asking me to take care of his mistress, too. It's just ridiculous. What? Why don't you ask your parents? What are you talking about? Asking elderly parents to take care of someone? You're a devil. Well, I think Callista would be happy to do it, wouldn't she? And what position are you in to say such a thing? Dave, who should be in a position to ask for help, never loses his arrogant attitude. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but wonder, what did I see in this guy? "Excuse me, coming through." Just then, a new bed was being brought in next to us. I glanced over, and as soon as I realized who it was, I screamed. "Huh? Kiera?" Because the woman there was someone I knew all too well. "I can't believe you're Dave's mistress." As I glared at her while saying this, she looked away. Now what should I do? "We're family. Help us out, will you?" Watching the two of them trying to cling to me, I pondered. I am Erica, a 35-year-old housewife, raising a lovely 10-year-old son. I have a younger sister, 6 years my junior, and frankly, we don't get along. My sister Kiera is irresponsible, and she ran off with a man as soon as she graduated from high school. "I'm sorry, Erica. I shouldn't be causing you stress right now." My parents lamented over Kiera, apologizing to me repeatedly for causing me trouble. I was pregnant at the time, and they didn't want to tell me. However, when Kiera ran away, she took all the money from home, so they had no choice but to contact me. Indeed, at that time, I was mentally disturbed thinking about my sister.
"Are you okay, Erica? You need to prioritize the child in your belly right now."
It was Dave, my husband, who supported me then. He suggested I go back to my parents' house for the birth, saying he was worried about me. Following his advice, I was able to support my parents with my savings and safely give birth to our son, Louis. By the way, I have already been repaid the money by my parents. Thank you, Dave. Because of your suggestion, I was able to feel relieved.
"Don't worry about it. I asked you to quit your job for me, so it's the least I can do."
I used to work at the same company as him. Back then, Dave was my trainer at work. I admired Dave, who taught me everything carefully, and after he confessed, we started dating. And when I got pregnant with Louis, we had a shotgun marriage. At that time,
"I want my wife to stay at home. If you don't mind, could you quit your job?"
So I decided to become a housewife. Although I had some regrets about leaving my job, it worked out well, as I could support my parents. And the arrival of Louis brightened our previously gloomy home.
Mom, is there anything I can help with?"
"Well, you could clean the bath."
"Sure, leave it to me."
Louis, who has grown up quite a bit, is still very sweet and obedient. He plays energetically every day and does his homework if I ask him to. His current craze seems to be helping around the house, frequently asking me if there's anything he can do. I'm always healed by his eagerness to help and his joyful attitude.
"I'm done."
"Thank you. Here's your payment for helping."
"Yay!"
Well, maybe the allowance I give him for helping is what he's after. But living with my beloved family like this, I was truly happy. One day, while I was doing housework, I got a call from my mother-in-law, Callista. "We haven't seen each other in a while. Come over this weekend and bring Louis. I'll prepare a feast." "I'm sorry, but we already have plans for this weekend." "Is that so? Can't you change your plans? Does it have to be this weekend?" I replied to Callista saying, "I'll discuss it with Dave," and somehow evaded giving a direct answer. It hasn't even been a month since our last visit. I know she's not a bad person, but it's not like my in-laws are bad people, and they don't harass me. However, Callista adores her only son, Dave, and her only grandchild, Louis. That's why she's so eager to have them at her house. It's not that I mind going to my in-laws' house, and generally, as a daughter-in-law, I'm not burdened with chores. They treat me like a guest, not even letting me into the kitchen to help. However, being at the in-laws is always a bit stressful.
Louis is just like me, really smart. Good thing he didn't take after Erica. She was slow at work, might have struggled with her studies.
And when we go there, Dave starts drinking from the afternoon. Then he talks about me in a mocking way to his father-in-law Walton.
Erica should be a bit more flexible.
When Dave says this, Walton, without hearing my side, typically responds that way. It's always been unpleasant for me. There's another thing I dislike. Grandma says we should come over this weekend. What do you want to do, Louis?
If it's Dad's side, I don't want to go.
Louis dislikes going to his paternal grandparents. At 10, he finds it boring. True, the area around the in-laws is just a quiet residential neighborhood, with no parks or nature to play in. They have a garden, but it's under Walton's meticulous care, so it's hardly a place to run around. Louis brings homework or games, but...
You don't need to do homework. Louis is smart enough.
Games are boring. I don't understand them. Let's talk with Grandma and Grandpa instead. His doting grandparents take the games away. And even when I object, they just say, yes, yes, and don't stop. And Dave holds me back with that,
it's okay once in a while.
It's natural for Louis to find it dull. I'd rather go with Dad and Mom than to Dad's mom's house. Sometimes Louis asks Dave this.
Visiting my parents is an outing.
He dismissively replies, even when I argue that Louis's opinion should be heard.
Indulging every whim isn't good for his education.
That's what I get in return. Dave says this, but he's never really been involved in parenting. When Louis was a baby, he'd visit occasionally while I stayed at my parents' house. Diaper changing, bathing, it was all left to me or my parents. He hardly ever held Louis. When I said I wanted to return home, he said,
it's still tough for both of us. Better to stay at your parents' house.
Back then, I thought he was being considerate, but now it seems he just didn't want to be involved in childcare. Maybe he finds taking Louis to his parents easier than dealing with him himself.
Dad doesn't care about me.
That's what Louis says about his father. I scold him for it, but inside, I'm troubled. Incidentally, this week, I plan to take Louis to my parents' house. So when Dave came home, I tried to talk him out of visiting his parents.
My parents' house should take precedence.
But we went there almost every week last month, and it's only been half a month since. We haven't been to my parents' house in nearly a year, despite staying there when Louis was a baby. My in-laws call us every week because of the stay at their house during my postpartum period. They couldn't see the baby at will then, so now they want him here, is their reasoning. To set the record straight, it's not like they never saw him as a baby. They stayed at my parents' house for almost a week. Back then, my in-laws acted like mere guests. And since coming back here, we've only visited them 2 or 3 times a year.
Your parents' house is boring to me.
Enough already. We decided on this visit to my parents half a year ago. If you prefer your parents' house so much, why don't you go alone?
Then I'll do that.
Dave agrees readily. I can't help but wonder if he really cares about our family. I shake off such thoughts quickly, but they only lead to more worries. That's why I decided to start working from home, just in case. I don't earn much, but it keeps me from dwelling on unnecessary thoughts, and having some savings gives me a little peace of mind. If I want Dave to be closer, I have to be closer too. That's how I started to see things more objectively, but my efforts turned out to be in vain. Dad, Mom, long time no see.
Ah, long time indeed.
You've grown so much, Louis. And so, as planned, I took Louis and went back to my parents' house. My father, Rudolph, and mother, Leonora, were thrilled to see Lewis after such a long time, and Lewis looked really happy too.
Lewis, I practiced the game you said you liked. Would you like to play it together? Really? I want to. Oh, but I have to do my homework first.
That's good of you. Then use the living room. Your mom and I will prepare the meal while you're working on your homework. My parents prioritized Lewis's wish like that. Just that made me feel better compared to my in-laws. What's wrong? You look worried. My mother noticed my troubled expression and spoke to me. Since Lewis was occupied with my father, I decided to confide in my mother about recent events. True, we monopolized him when he was a baby, but that was only for about 2 months after his birth. And ignoring Lewis's wishes like that. Honestly, I wonder if continuing this marriage is just going to make Lewis suffer. That's something to think about. You should have a serious talk with Dave. And remember, if it comes to that, we're here to support you. You can always come back home. I felt a deep gratitude for my mother's words. I knew my father would say the same. Just then, "I'm home," I heard that voice. And as my mother and I exchanged surprised glances, a woman with a little girl came in. "Kiera?" "Hey, big sis. Why are you here at our parents' house?" The woman was Kiera, my sister, whom I hadn't seen in 10 years. The little girl, about Lewis's age, was hiding behind her. Kiera.
What are you doing here?"
Our parents were also surprised by her sudden return. Ignoring our reactions, Kiera casually dropped her bags and said, "I'm tired. Put these in my room." Sensing the strange atmosphere, Lewis quickly came to my side.
Kiera, what have you been doing all this time?
I got married where I eloped, too. Summarizing Kiera's story, she had a daughter, Aaliyah, at the place she eloped to. She had been living with her family of 3, but now she was back as a single mother after getting divorced.
You're always so selfish. Stop causing us trouble.
My father shouted at Kiera, who was smiling nonchalantly. Seeing our father's anger, the children hiding behind their mothers looked scared. "Dad, calm down. The kids are getting scared."
Sorry.
My father calmed down after seeing the children, each hiding behind their mother. Realizing we couldn't continue this conversation in front of them, I told Lewis to go to his room for a while. "So, Kiera, what are you planning to do now?" Once Lewis was in his room, my mother asked Kiera that question. "Of course, I'll stay here. I can't raise Aaliyah alone." At her words, our gazes turned to Aaliyah. She was warily observing us. She had a cute face, resembling Kiera. The thought of kicking out my niece, who was feeling insecure because of her mother, made us decide to let Kiera stay for the time being. "Thanks, then I'll go buy the essentials for living." "Wait a minute." Unable to stop my sister as she quickly left, an awkward silence fell over us, and Aaliyah, who was looking down.
"I'm Lewis. What's your name?"
"I'm Aaliyah."
"Nice to meet you. I've got some games. Let's play together."
Lewis, coming out of his room, kindly spoke to Aaliyah, breaking the tense atmosphere. Thanks to him, Aaliyah slowly began to let her guard down. Since then, Kiera had become totally dependent on our parents' home. Occasionally, I'd hear from them on the phone, how they were being totally thrown off by her. This means going back to my parents' house is difficult now. Hearing that, I felt like I'd lost my refuge. And sighed at the thought of not being able to divorce. Lewis looked up at me worried.
"Why are you sighing?"
One day, as I sighed, Dave spoke to me. I told him about Kiera, and he just replied with a nonchalant, Despite my worries, Dave wasn't serious about listening to me.
"Why don't you help your sister?"
Dave said this irresponsibly, noticing my displeasure. Just as I was about to retort, the doorbell rang. "Ding dong!" "Ah, there she is." Kiera. Opening the front door, I saw Kiera and Aaliyah standing there. Apparently, they had gotten our address from my parents. I've got something urgent to take care of. Take care of Aaliyah for me, will you? With that, Kiera left Aaliyah with us and left before I could stop her. Wait!
Is that the sister you mentioned?
I called out to Kiera, who quickly disappeared, and Dave came over. Dave appeared, having been apparently watching us. Yes, that's her.
I'll scold her when she comes back to pick up Aaliyah.
Surprised by his words, I looked at Dave. It was rare for him to take charge like this, but I decided to leave it in his hands. Having Aaliyah thrust upon us was troubling, but it meant we could avoid the planned visit to my in-laws. Seeing Lewis taking the initiative to talk to Aaliyah, they started playing together. I watched them, smiling, and observed Dave, who was unusually cheerful. Erica, I've come to pick up Aaliyah.
I'll handle it. You stay with Lewis.
Kiera returned when it was dark outside. Dave took Aaliyah to meet her, and he came back even more cheerful.
The kid understood well, said it was an emergency this time, and will be more careful in the future.
Really? I was a bit suspicious. But after that day, Kiera stopped coming to our house. She had apparently calmed down at my parents' house, too. Meanwhile, Dave started saying he was busy, going on late-night work, and sudden business trips. He explained to his parents that his work was keeping him from visiting them. So we no longer had to go to the in-laws as often. Still, it seemed suspicious. That's what I thought. Then it happened.
Next weekend, I have to go on a business trip. It'll be a bit long.
Oh, really? Take care. Dave was going on a week-long business trip. I was suspicious, but decided to see him off with a smile. Hey, can I come over now? I called my parents and found out Kiera was not home, so I decided to take Lewis back to my parents' house. Lewis noticed Aaliyah and immediately invited her to play. Aaliyah, who seemed to have opened up to Lewis, happily accepted. Welcome back. I said we'd be here for you, but I'm sorry we couldn't do more. It's all right. I never thought Kiera would come back.
Hey, you too. Look at the TV.
While chatting with my mother, my father called us to check the TV. There was news of a plane crash. Wow, that's terrible. Lots of people are seriously injured. Most of the victims had been rescued, but many were seriously injured. Then my phone rang with an unknown number. Hello? Yes, Dave is my husband, but... What? What happened? Dave was on that plane. He's been rescued but taken to the hospital urgently. The call was from the hospital. I left Lewis with my parents and headed straight to the hospital. In the crash, Dave was saved, but had sustained serious injuries. I'm Dave's wife. Right this way. A nurse led me to Dave's room. There he was, lying in the hospital bed. Dave?
Hey there, Erica.
Surprisingly, Dave seemed quite energetic, so I asked for details. Apparently, he had become paraplegic due to the accident.
Really, it's the worst. It was supposed to be a trip with my mistress.
What? Mistress?
I thought you hadn't realized. This business trip was a lie.
I was stunned by his words, spoken without any remorse. Dave continued, unashamed.
Both she and I are now paraplegic because of this. You're the only one who can take care of us.
What are you saying? My concern for him vanished, along with my love for Dave.
Please take care of us both.
Dave pleaded, but I was utterly dismayed by his request. He expected me to take care of his mistress too? I couldn't believe it. What? Why don't you ask your parents?
What are you talking about? Asking elderly parents to take care of someone? You're a devil.
Well, I'm sure Colesta would be happy to do it, wouldn't she? And in what position are you to say such a thing?
Despite being in a position to ask for help, Dave maintained his arrogant attitude. Seeing this, I couldn't help but wonder, what did I ever see in him? "Excuse me, coming through." At that moment, a new bed was brought into the room next to us. I glanced over, and realizing who it was, I involuntarily screamed. "Kira?" The woman there was someone I knew very well. Apparently, because they were together, they were brought to the same hospital room. The mistress brought next to Dave was none other than my sister Kiera. "I can't believe you were Dave's mistress." As I glared at her, Kiera looked away. Dave, taking over for Kiera, began to explain. Apparently, they had exchanged contact information on the day Kiera left Leah with us. On the days Dave claimed to be working late or on business trips, the two of them were meeting and nurturing their love. Hearing this, my anger reached its peak. "So you both betrayed us and got into a crash, and now you want me to take care of you? That's audacious." What should I do now? As I was thinking, Dave said something quite annoying. "Come on, we're family. Help us out, will you?" "Please, Erica." Watching the two of them cling to me, I started to think, now's my chance to say what I want. For you two, family seems to be a very convenient concept.
"That's not what we meant."
Then what does family mean to you? A father who doesn't participate in parenting? Who forces his son to go places he doesn't want to? Dave finally fell silent, realizing my anger. My gaze then turned to Kiera. "You've always wanted what others have, to the point of stealing boyfriends, making everyone dislike you. The aftermath always fell on me and our parents. Is that what family means to you? Just causing trouble?" But... Well, now neither of you can cheat again, right? Why don't you two just marry each other? Dave and Kiera, seemingly not expecting me to be this angry, were stunned. The nurses who had been observing us were quietly talking amongst themselves. For now, I'll explain things to both families. As for the future, you two figure it out. With that, I left the room. I then explained the situation to both families. My parents said,
"They got what they deserved. It's divine retribution."
"We're appalled. We can't take care of them anymore. They refuse to take Kiera back." Dave's parents, on the other hand, were persuaded by Callista and Walton to take them in. "Oh, and I'm getting a divorce, so don't rely on me." To that, Callista said, "I wish you'd reconsider." But it wasn't me who responded. It was Lewis.
"You guys are the worst. You don't care about Mom, who was betrayed."
Callista turned pale at his words. She tried to make excuses, but neither I nor Lewis wanted to hear any more. Further investigation revealed that Dave had been cheating for a long time. It started around the time I resigned. He suggested going back to my parents for childbirth because it made it easier for him to cheat. He had me quit my job because his mistress at the time was from the same company to avoid getting caught. I was really made a fool of. I went to the hospital room with the investigation results and divorce papers. Unlike when I arrived, Dave and Kiera had shrunk in size, probably realizing the situation after our conversation and receiving cold stares from the nurses. "Sign this."
"Wait, if you divorce me..."
"Callista will take care of you." I ignored their pleas and quickly finalized the divorce. Then I went back to my parents' house with Lewis. Now, the problem is, left at my parents' house was Aaliyah. She was a victim too. So my parents and I discussed what to do. Eventually, they hired a detective to find Aaliyah's father, Bud. Finally, we met Bud.
"Thank you for contacting me. I've always been concerned about Aaliyah."
Apparently, he and Kiera divorced due to her affair. Bud claimed custody, but there were mediators who believed the child should be with the mother. Because of that, he lost custody. About Kiera, I started explaining Kiera's current situation. He apologized, saying, "I'm sorry for the trouble we've caused." Looking at him, he didn't seem like someone who would elope with a minor like Kiera, so I asked him about the elopement.
"Actually, she first approached me, using your name."
What? Apparently my sister used my insurance card to approach Bud and falsified various things about her identity. She then demanded marriage after claiming to be pregnant.
"Though I was deceived, I truly love Kiera. Above all, I still love our daughter, Aaliyah. That's why I want to take custody of her."
I think you are capable of taking good care of her. So I decided to entrust Aaliyah to him. When Bud and I returned home with Aaliyah, she hugged him with a big smile.
"We'll be together from now on."
Really? I'm so happy. And with that, they left smiling. With Aaliyah's safety secured, we decided to move. Staying at my parents' house, Dave and the others might come looking for us. The detective told me it seems those two visited the house once. We had a detective watching their movements. Dave and Kiera, after being discharged, tried to rely on me and visited my parents' house, being pushed in wheelchairs by Dave's parents. However, by then nobody was there, so they went to Dave's parents' house together. Apparently Kiera was allowed to live there as Dave's loved one, but Walton and Callista, being elderly, were struggling with their care, and their days were filled with arguments. Well, that was to be expected. Dave, Kiera, and his parents are all selfish. They try to force their views on others. People like me and my parents who tolerate them maintained a balance. Now that I was gone, conflicts were inevitable. Well, it's none of my business anymore. I had no sympathy for them. Still, I had to make sure to cover all my bases. With that in mind, I headed to a law firm. A few days later, I was out with Lewis.
"I'm so happy to go shopping with Mom."
Lewis was in a great mood, as we hadn't been out much lately, while I was smiling at his happiness. "Erica!" I was startled by my sister's voice and froze. Seeing her struggling to push her wheelchair, I thought of grabbing Lewis and running away. "Aaliyah, isn't she with you?" But hearing her ask about Aaliyah first, I decided to listen to her story. We went to a nearby cafe. "Initially, I was staying at Dave's house, but..." Kiera was the lowest in the pecking order in that house. She was ostracized and bore the brunt of their frustration. In the midst of such days, she became concerned about Aaliyah. Once worried, she wanted to see Aaliyah, even though she knew she had no right, so she somehow escaped from Dave's house. But with nowhere to go, she wandered the streets. That's when I heard Lewis's voice. She found us guided by his voice. But without Aaliyah, she panicked and approached me. "Aaliyah is with Bud." At my words, Kiera froze, then smiled in relief. "Bud's place is safe for her." "Have you thought about what you'll do next?" "I have one person who said they'll help me." That person is a friend she met while eloping, who works at a support facility. They agreed to take care of her for a while. Apparently, they were supposed to pick her up tomorrow, and she escaped before that. "She scolded me for acting impulsively, but she's coming to pick me up." To Kiera, who said this, I handed her a document. It was a list of jobs that could be done even by someone in a wheelchair. "What's this?" "It's because I'm going to claim alimony from you. You seem remorseful, so I'll allow installments. Find a job." "Okay. I'm sorry." After that, Kiera left with a friend who came to pick her up. Maybe she can still turn her life around. "Sorry for taking up your time. Shall we go shopping?" Then Lewis and I left the cafe. But then,
"Erica?"
we ran into Dave. His parents were nearby, looking around, probably in search of Kiera. "Do you need something?"
"Hey, can't we start over? It's better to be together as a family, right?"
Stop joking. I have no intention of going back to you. Dave approached me out of self-preservation, unlike Kiera. Disappointed by his attitude, I gave him a cold look. I want the compensation from the divorce and child support in a lump sum.
I'm ashamed that Dad is my father.
Dave stopped in his tracks at our cold response. We turned our backs on him and walked away. Kiera was better than him, in a way. Focusing on shopping with Lewis, I put these thoughts aside.
Erica! Lewis!
His voice no longer reached me. Later, with the help of a lawyer, I claimed alimony from both of them. Kiera started to pay the alimony. Apparently, she's struggling with her new life and job. Her friend only offers minimal help. Kiera was so obedient and cute when she was little. Perhaps the hardships have brought back some of her old self. As for Dave, he had a hard time too. He ended up selling his parents' house and using all their retirement funds to pay the lump sum. Am I being too harsh? Even though they were at fault, it might be too much to demand from someone paraplegic.
It's nothing for you to worry about.
That's right. You're just asserting your rightful claim.
My parents reassured me when I felt a bit guilty. As for Aaliyah, she seems happy with Bud. According to Bud, she has grown fond of Lewis, who is kind to her. Hearing this made me feel relieved. Sometime later, I received a letter from Bud. It contained parts of a letter Kiera had written to Bud.
I always wanted to be like Erica, but I couldn't be her. I became reckless and lost my way. But I truly fell in love with Bud and genuinely love Aaliyah.
She concluded with,
I don't deserve to see Aaliyah or Erica.
Kiera probably won't appear before me again. That's the punishment she imposed on herself.
Mom, can I go to my friend's house today?
Sure, but make sure you come back before it's late. In our new home, Lewis has made friends and enjoys school. I will continue to live a peaceful life with my precious family. With that thought, I watched Lewis run off energetically.